Hey folks, and welcome. You have to apologize. I'm having a little bit of internet connectivity problems here. So hopefully you all can hear me. Could someone raise my hand if they can hear me clearly, just so I know that um, this thing is actually working? Let me see. I might actually just call on someone then. Let me see. Let me see. I'm going to ask Adam here. Uh, or Carla. Carla, are you there?
Yes.
Oh, my sound is okay?
Yes, it sounds great.
Okay, all right, thanks. Okay, so sorry about that, guys, but yeah, I don't know what happened. The system was a little weird a second ago. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the class and answer any questions you guys have. I can go around and just check in with you, see if you have any specific questions. But let me give you a little overview of what we're doing and what we're up to first. So this is me, Dan Kalish. Hi, everyone, and I've been teaching for a while now. About I think the 13th year coming up for this particular class. Been working with patients for 20, 25 years. Now I just got back from the IFM conference in Tennessee. I'm on the IFM faculty, which is probably one of the biggest honors of my career, and I'm leading their practice implementation program. So I get to go to all the IFM events and have become really close with all of their faculty as well. And it's just a wonderful time in general for our profession and really exciting time for me professionally. I'm kind of peaking right now, which is great. And I will show you also a little bit of a tour of the class too. Oh, and I did a study with the Mayo Clinic, and that's not really my thing to do research studies, but I'm kind of understanding a little bit more about how our overall profession works and in all these different endeavors that I've been involved in recently. So I want to show you a little bit about how the class is actually structured. And uh, basically it's a one-year program, and it has three really big components. The first big component is the actual curriculum. And here's an example of what that actually looks like. And the curriculum is structured in a linear way. There's module one that is then going to module two, that then goes to module three. And the really big topics that we cover include adrenal hormones, thyroid, mitochondria, neurotransmitters, GI, all the basics of functional medicine are gone through in this year-long curriculum. You get access to the whole year of materials on your first day. So if you're interested in doing the year-long curriculum in 6 weeks, go for it. I've had people do the whole year of lectures in as little as 2 months or 3 months. If you do not have children, that at least children that are at home, and that you have extra time on the weekends, man, you can just power through this whole thing if you really want. But it's designed to be absorbed in bite-sized chunks over the course of about 12 months, meaning that you need about 3 to 5 hours a week each week to get through the lectures and the other coursework and stuff to make the whole thing happen. If you have more time than that, then you can obviously do a lot more. So that's a big part of it, right? A year-long curriculum. It is all oriented in a very practical way. So when we talk about the adrenals and HPA axis dysfunction, all the lectures are given in the same language that you would explain this information to a patient. So it's very simple, easy to understand, and we're hoping that you can use the lectures from which you're learning as the dialogue points and talking points for what you do with patients. So try to kind of structure it in that way. Okay, so again, there's a total of 12 months of curriculum in a linear fashion that is the basis of the actual um, coursework itself, right? But that's about a third, and probably the least important third of the whole thing. So the second part of this that's super important are the live weekly calls. And we just had one, or I just taught one a minute ago. And the live weekly calls are usually the practitioner's favorite parts. So I'll show you an example. This is a call from this morning that we did. And so what happens is we all jump on the phone on a webinar, in a webinar format. So you're looking at your computer screen. And this just happened, a few hours ago today. Here's Michael Chang, he's a medical doc, submitting a case as an attorney, as the patient. And here's the adrenal lab and the GI lab. And let's see what else Michael put in. So doctors basically submit the tests that we're reviewing and learning about in the class. And organic acid. So he had all three for this patient. So again, this is a typical case. Michael Chang, medical doctor, his patient's a lawyer, complaints, low energy, bad diet, not enough rest. And we look at adrenal labs, we look at the GI labs, and then we look at organic acids for that patient. And then we talk about what would be the ideal program to carry out to make that person better. So that's the live calls each week, and that's one case there. Let me just show you another example. And here's Michael's workup. This is what he wanted to recommend. And of course, we talk about it, and I'm like, hey, maybe you could use a little bit more of that or less of this or whatever it may be, detail-wise for that protocol creation. Here's Rich, another doc, 42-year-old person. This person's a welder, and he's got a pounding heartbeat, tachycardia, blah, 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 insomnia. And so again, we have an adrenal lab for that patient, a GI lab for that patient, pathogens, and let's see, Rich also submitted an organic acids for that patient. So 2 cases from this morning, each one of them with a complete set of labs, and then we're just jumping in and talking about what all this means. And so we want to get an understanding of how I learned all this stuff. So my original teacher, Dr. Timmons, was really the expert in the adrenal lab field. So when Dr. Timmons was a very young man, he went to Germany with another guy named Dr. Ilias, and they came back from Germany really excited because they found these salivary test kits for cortisol that they could run. And this is in like the 1980s. They set up a lab in Los Angeles. It later moved to Washington State, became Diagnostics Lab, where they started running the first integrative medicine, alternative medicine, functional medicine labs for cortisol with the 4 salivary levels. And so Dr. Timmons, when I met him, was already 10 years into this work. I met him in 1995, and he taught me everything he knew over the course of 6 or 7 years about adrenal labs. And so I had a very long mentorship with him. You wouldn't think you could spend 6 or 7 years just learning about this one lab here, but he taught me a lot of other stuff too. Basically the adrenal and GI workups. So I teach the work as he taught it to me. He was a naturopath by training, and they're really effective protocols to fix HPA axis dysfunction, adrenal exhaustion, adrenal fatigue, whatever you want to call it. But really we're looking at the basic level of how the HPA axis is functioning or not functioning, and then figuring out strategies to correct that using supplements. It's a pretty sophisticated way to go, and it's a really great series of programs. And then also in the class we get in pretty deep into GI testing. And this patient had cryptosporidium. Wow, okay, that's a problem. How are we going to address that? Medications, you're going to use herbs, what's the best course of action? And then my current training now has been several years working with Richard Lord, and Richard Lord is the scientist that developed organic acids testing, the GI effects test, the NutriVal test. All that was the brainchild of Richard Lord. And so Richard spent many years now training me in how to interpret at a really high level these organic acids profiles. So you may know this test by a different name. Sometimes it's called a NutriVal. Sometimes it's called an OAT test. There's several different lab companies that run it. And basically, in my class, I'm teaching Richard Lord's work now, which is pretty intense. He is the scientist that developed all this technology, right? So he just sat around, for a few years and decided, hey, we better measure organic acids, and this is how we're going to do it. So having Richard be part of, our basically research department, education department, is pretty phenomenal. So what happens in the classes now is I talk to Richard every Monday, and that information comes out in class every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and whatnot. So you have direct access to the main scientists that developed all this work through me, and it's really exciting. And if you ever met Richard Lord, somebody that are newer to our profession may not even know his name, but he wrote a book called Laboratory Evaluations in Integrative and Functional Medicine, and he's just an amazing human being. He's in his late 70s now. Doesn't like to travel so much. He's really happy just to talk to me on Mondays and have me teach his work. So, anyways, super high level lab interpretation now. It's not the Dan Kalish show by any means. It's really me teaching Richard Lord's work. And we have several books that Richard has written that are coming out in the next couple months. And it's really kind of a golden era for me again in lab and analytics to really dig into these organic acids profiles at the deepest level possible and really understand the physiology of the problem that your patient's going through, whether it's related to a B vitamin or an amino acid. There's a lot to learn there, and we cover that in excruciating detail in class, okay? So we have the 1-year curriculum, we have the live calls every week, and then the third aspect of the class is the community feature, which is massive and hard to explain. So this is a piece of software that I've been working on for about 6 years, and it's pretty robust, let's say. So when you come into this world of what we call the community, you have access to the other practitioners, just like you would at Facebook or something like that, but it's all private, right? And password protected. And you have access to different ways of looking at the curriculum, and you have access to the case study library. So let me just show you real quick what that looks like. So here are the basic things, including case study library. So you go to the case study library, and we have several thousand cases in here now. So if you search for anything, we'll have it. Basically, how about fertility? How I spell it right? So you search for fertility, and it'll pop up case after case after case talking about different fertility problems that we've worked on. Here's case number 1676. Math professor had fertility challenge in autoimmune. So for each one of these cases, you'll have a video and then a transcription so you can read through what the case was all about. Okay, and these go on literally for years, right? You could never watch every case study. Let's say you have your first H. pylori case and you're not sure what to do. You would bring it to class, we talk about it in class, and you could just type in H. pylori and see there's probably more information on H. pylori here than you could ever get through. And you can search through the different cases or the different topics, recalcitrant H. pylori. What's the best protocol for eradicating H. pylori? It's a 7-year-old with anxiety and H. pylori, right? And literally this goes on just with one item like H. pylori. You can never get through all of these, right? Because each one of these is a video and a transcription. It's just a massive amount of information in here that we've accumulated over the years, and all clinically relevant. Super amazing that we've been able to do this. And I have a really great team that's been helping me with this for a long time. It's my vision, but it gets executed with other human beings who can do all this. So we also have, that's the case study library, and we also have these clinical topics. And this is another year of information in here. So the clinical topics, we try to divide up by big categories. And so I don't know, let's just look at some of the recent ones. Program design, that's just how to design supplement programs. Patient communication, that's important. Here's employee terminations in integrative and functional medicine. Well, if you're gonna start a practice, you're gonna be hiring and firing people. You gotta figure that out. So it could be anything from reviewing, a lab test to talking about how to hire and fire people, all the things that you need to run a practice. Oh, this is a really good one I did a month or two ago. I interviewed Kara Ware on how to use a health coach. This is one of the best health coach talks I've ever heard. And it's not me being brilliant, it's Kara being brilliant. It's just me being brilliant enough to be the one that wanted to interview her. In fact, it was so good that I had her come back a second time. So we got hours and hours on coaching and how to integrate a coach into your practice. And you can look at anything from, if you want to like get super into organic acids profiles, like I mentioned earlier, you can cut over to here, and there's another half a dozen packed hours of information on that. If you're curious about female hormones, you can click on that and you'll have female hormone cases that go on endlessly. So the clinical topics are not cases, they're just general subjects, whether they're guest speakers or me talking on the topic or whatever it may be. So whenever we have a really good clip, 10 minutes to an hour, that's on a specific topic, we'll throw it into this particular clinical topic section. So whether it's detoxification or business, it's all just sitting right there, okay? So remember, there's the year-long curriculum, there's the live weekly calls, and then there's the community, which I'm trying to show you here. We also have what I call the treatment map, which is pretty cool. This is just a way to look at the clinical topics that we go through. So here are the basic topics for the course, so you can see. all on one page. So adrenals and thyroid, neurotransmitters, mitochondrial energy production, female hormones, GI pathogens, food, leaky gut, microbiome issues, detox, oxidative stress, and methylation, inflammation-related things, and nutrient replacement. These are the big topics. And for each one of these, we have programs or protocols that are already really well developed. You can just look them up, pretty straightforward, right? And then there are also supplement lists for each one of these. And so depending on what company you want to use and your background, we have partnered with Metagenics, Pure Encapsulations, and Designs for Health. And we have each of those companies represented in the class. So you can sort of learn the language of the supplement companies if you choose one of those three. Pure Encapsulations, Metagenics, or Designs for Health. And between those three brands, you should be able to find one of them that you really like. Some of them private label, some don't. Some of them you may already have in your clinic, some you may not. So, we're kind of brand neutral as long as you choose one of those three, because it's impossible for me to design programs based on every single company. So we picked the three that were honestly just my favorite, but I think they're also industry leaders. And usually it's pretty easy for doctors to choose amongst those three. It should be pretty simple. So you're also learning, literally, if you're a metagenics oriented person, you're going to learn the whole course in the language of metagenic supplements. So it's very sort of reality based in that we want you to actually be able to order all this stuff and figure out how to get what you need from each company and whatnot. So for each of the companies, Pure, Metagenics, and Designs for Health, we have a list of about 50 supplements that you're going to want to learn how to use. Here's one of them, one of the lists, and what each product's for, how it relates to the labs, all that's really clearly laid out. Okay, so you can start to get familiar with that, as well as exactly what labs to use from what lab companies. And we have practitioners from all over the world. So like if you look at, let me just show you the class that I just taught a few minutes ago. We have a bunch of New Zealanders in there and a bunch of Australians in there. And so you'll see here's Verona. I think she's Australia based. Um, let's see, that's in her basic organic acids that she submitted. But let me just cut down here a little bit further. There, it's if you're in a different country, it's not a big deal. We have, let me show you. These are all American labs, but let me show you some of the Australia, New Zealand ones. Here we go. This is what they look like from Australia, New Zealand. There's Nutripath. It's a slightly different company. A lot of these companies are just distribution branches for American-based labs. So anyways, we're pretty accommodating of wherever you're from in the world. Right now we have a doctor in China, Australia, New Zealand, the UK. We just had a guy from Bolivia that finished the class. Anyways, it doesn't really matter where you are. You can make this work. And I have contacts now pretty much all over the world, so we can usually get you hooked up with people that are going to be, helpful in terms of guiding your educational process. So again, there's three components: the year-long curriculum, the live classes, and then this basic community feature, we call it, with all the different resources available. It's thousands and thousands of hours of stuff. The guiding principle I've had this whole time is it's got to be mission critical information for practitioners. How to hire and work with a health coach, to me, is mission critical. How to hire and fire staff members is super important. How to do an H. pylori program is important. How to interpret an organic acid. So everything is really related to tying back to this idea of what do I feel like doctors really need to have to be super successful. And it's just as important that you hire a good front desk person as it is that you know how to do an H. pylori program. So we're really including everything. And I think after like over 1,000 people that I've trained, I'm not saying I've heard everything, but I kind of heard everything like 10 times. So I have a pretty good sense of what most people need, and I try to sort of guide the process. So because we have too much information for anyone to absorb. So I try to guide the process so you can curate the information and get what you need to grow your practice, which is really the whole point. And if that all fails, you have your searchable database thing, and you can type in EMR and read about EMRs for a week if that's really what you want to know. and some of these are going to be generated by other students. Some are lectures that I did or interviews that I did. Anyone using Power to Practice, anyone using MDHQ, you can get honest opinions from other practitioners about that. And then you could also type in, I don't know, let's say thyroid, and geek out on, endless hours of thyroid information as well, okay? Just goes on and on and on and on. And at first it is overwhelming because it's an overwhelming amount of information, but once you get familiar with how this all works, then it's pretty exciting for most people to be able to interact and do all this stuff, okay? All right, so let me just see if there's any questions. Let me go back here. So we got the class curriculum, we got the community that I mentioned, we've got the live calls. We have a special offer now on signups. So if you sign up by the 9th of November, towards the end of this week, the code is VIP November 18, NOV 18. Get $1,000 off the class. The class is going to start next week. It's coming up already. If you want to talk with someone, you can schedule with Mark Herbert. You can schedule with myself. We can give you a little more detail on actually what the class is like. The groups are pretty small, usually 10 or 15 practitioners on a call. Some of the really big calls, we might have as many as 20. So let me just go through questions that have been coming in. First question, how do the classes work in terms of times of day and setup? So right now, for the courses that we're starting, we have West Coast time, United States West Coast time. We have a 9 a.m. West Coast time, Pacific time start, and we have a 5 p.m. Start time, and those are both on Tuesday. So Tuesday at 9 in the morning, Pacific time, and Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific time would be the two times that you could choose from. One of those, not both, that would be your live call. And then how big are the classes? Yeah, I just mentioned anywhere from 10 to 20 people. We pretty much answer every question every week and go over every lab every week, unless something unusual happens. So it's a big enough group that you get to a lot of interaction and a lot of exposure to other cases, but it's not so big that it feels overwhelming or like you're getting neglected. Um, what happens after the course is done if you still need help? So if you finish the year-long class and you want to stick around, we have an ongoing Q&A call that you can join. $199 a month to stay in that group as long as you want. You can still submit labs and go over cases. A lot of people stick around for an extra year or two. If I'm a nurse practitioner, can I take the course? Yeah, so the types of practitioners that we have the most right now, medical doctors, nurse practitioners, medical doctor would include DOs. We always have a DO, one or two that seem to join each group. We have chiropractors, naturopaths. We have some, sort of not common folks. Like we'll always have a pharmacist every year or a couple pharmacists. We have a dentist every year or two, but that's not very common. Once in a while, we'll have a PhD type person who's somehow also treating patients. If you don't have a license to order the labs and order the supplements, then you have to be working in some kind of an office structure where you can do all that. So we don't get very many health coaches or nutritionists taking this class. It's usually going to be someone licensed as a chiropractor, naturopath, medical doc, nurse practitioner, PA, something like that. Those are the most common. Let's see. How is my class different from IFM? So, hey, I can answer that one because I'm on IFM faculty. So IFM I see as like the medical school. It's where you really get the real education, detail, the research, the latest and amazing complexities of functional medicine. And the mentorship is more like a residency program. It's like what supplement you use and how many pills that you give every day. It's how much tryptophan does that person need based on that amino acid test. It's the real practical nitty-gritty application side. And so people need both, right? You need to get educated in general and broad terms, which is what IFM is so good at. And then people, if you want to start a practice, need the practical implementation part. And so I'm really like the implementation person. And we do not try to imitate IFM at all. We're actually really a sort of a partner or a group that can work with IFM. I'd say at least half the people that we train are either IFM certified or in the process of getting certified, and they're using my class to get the practice started. How long do you have access to the materials? So you have access to the lectures for life. And I honestly don't know if that's the rest of your life or the rest of my life. It's probably the rest of my life because if I'm dead, this class may shut down. I'm not really sure. But anyways, for a long, long time. I'm 54 years old. My Taoist meditation teacher says I'm going to live to 144, which I think is a little unrealistic. But anyways, you have long-term access to the lectures. And then if you want to stay in the community and keep submitting labs for the live calls, you can pay that extra fee of $199 a month and stick around for the extra classwork as well. But you get access to the lectures forever, basically. Um, who teaches the live Q&A session? So I teach pretty much everything now. If I'm out of town or unavailable, we do have a substitute teacher that comes in to teach, but I do almost all of them. How many hours a week does the class take? So again, 3 to 5 hours is sort of a minimum. If you have more time, you can put more time into it for sure. Let's see. How much individual attention do I get? So I do a new doctor intake call with everyone that signs up for the class. We talk for 15 minutes, maybe half an hour, et cetera, on how to get all this to, get started for you and how to customize it. And then if there's anything urgent that comes up, I talk to practitioners whenever you have a problem. I'm available Mondays and Thursdays, but most of the interaction happens within class. Let me grab Adam, had some other questions too. Adam, you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
yeah, you're good. Yeah.
So you may have answered a couple of these, but I'm just revisiting them.
Yeah, so the live calls are about an hour.
Okay.
Sometimes we go over if there's a ton of labs. Um, and then let's see. Oh, guidance on how to order labs. So the way that the class is structured is they try to do the class in the order in which you need to get started, right? So the very first part of the very first module is what lab kits to order and how to order them, because that's kind of the first thing you have to do. And then the next step after that is what supplements and what supplement companies that you're going to be able to want to be able to use, access. Because once the labs come in, you're going to need supplements. And then we kind of have it in a stepwise fashion like that. So if you go through the curriculum in a linear fashion, you're just getting exactly what you need each step of the way.
Okay. And
And
how about like
yeah.
cost of labs and we're charging the patients for them? Is there some guidance on that end of it, or is that sort of up to us to figure out?
Yeah, so no, that's something I have really strong opinions about. And so some of that is in the curriculum, but not a lot of it. And that would be like the perfect, first Q&A question, your first class, like how do you really deal with this stuff? And that's, so the live calls are really for answering either case study related questions or general business questions like that that aren't covered. Um, and so it's easier for all of us if we use the same lab companies, and there's some variation based on the country that the person's in and whatnot. But most people are using Genova Labs, Doctor's Data. There's this one lab called BioHealth. I like their adrenal panels. But, you have a few choices of different companies. And the costs for the labs are pretty similar. Most companies charge $100 and something for an adrenal panel. Most companies charge $300 to $400 for a really comprehensive GI panel. Most companies charge 300 to 350-ish for an organic acids test. So there's pretty much a fair amount of consistency among the pricing. And then just to keep it consistent, I have certain labs that it's easier to learn from, certain companies. So we use a lot of Genova, a little bit of BioHealth, some doctors' data. A lot of doctors like to submit the GI map test. It's not part of my curriculum, but a lot of doctors are doing that one. So that one gets, brought up in class a lot. But I have it pretty heavily structured, and then some people kind of break out of that structure depending on if they have, personal, what do you call it, like opinions or tendencies to do one test over another.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. And then, also on the labs in terms of insurance, we have this question comes up a lot, like how to charge for supplements. Should I private label? Should I use a distribution company? We strongly recommend if you don't want to carry the supplements yourself, you use a company like FullScript that'll satisfy all the shipping stuff to all your patients. And so we try to cover all that practical detail in the class itself. And if it's not obvious, you can't find it, then you can just bring it up in class. Let me just see. I've never typed this in before. I'm just curious now that Adam brought it up. Let me see what happens. How to order labs. I never tried that before. Let's see what happens. I don't know what's going to pop up. Ordering labs. Ha! Look at that. That's kind of cool. Helps. Yeah. So you can also search for things like this too, and you'll see a ton of information that way. But the curriculum is pretty structured. Oh, here we are. Guidelines for ordering test kits. This is like our official version of it, so you can see what tests to order and how to make all that happen. Okay. Let me see if there are any more questions. Go ahead and raise your hand if you have a question, or just type it in. Otherwise, let me check my list from before. I think I got through everything. Yeah, I think I did. Okay, so if more stuff comes up, we are starting class, I think next week. I'm happy to talk with you. I have Mondays and Thursdays available to call doctors, and we have Mark Herbert available on other days to answer questions. You get $1,000 off if you decide to sign up soon in the next few days. And super happy if you want to join the class. We have a really good group going right now that you'd be joining, and be welcome to have you. The next group that we're going to start is towards the end of January, if this time frame doesn't work for you for some reason. Okay. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us tonight, and I hope to see you soon. Thanks.